In Planet Reddit, today's story is...
My husband hid a secret box in the attic for months. When I discovered his late ex-wife's diaries and the twin photos, I understood the terrible truth. Hi everyone, get ready for a long story. My name is Dina, I'm 33, and I've been married to Marcus, 37, for a year. We met through mutual friends, and it all happened very quickly. One moment we were getting to know each other, and the next we were engaged in 5 months, and married a year. I guess when you know that someone is the right person, you just know it, right? At least that's what I thought. Marcus had been married before. His first wife, Aliyah, had been his girlfriend since high school. They had been together for 7 years until she passed away. All I knew about her was what Marcus told me, that she had struggled with mental health issues and ended up taking her own life 3 years before we met. He didn't talk about her much, and I never pressed the issue. It's a sensitive subject, but this is where things start to get weird. We have an attic in our house, but I had never been up there, not once. It was always full of dust and clutter, and Marcus told me it was just old junk. According to him, there was no point in cleaning it, but this spring, I got the urge for a deep clean and decided it was time to tidy up the attic. That's when I found a locked box. I'm not normally nosy. Well, maybe a little, but something about this box practically screamed secrets. So I asked Marcus, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, for the key, and his reaction was completely strange. He got defensive and told me to leave the attic alone. He was acting so weird about it that my instinct immediately told me that he was hiding something, and let me tell you, when your instinct tells you that something is not right, you should listen to it. A week later, the perfect opportunity arose. Marcus had to go to his mother's house because she wasn't feeling well, and he would be staying there all week. As soon as he left, I knew exactly what I was going to do. I bought some tools to break the lock. It was old and rusty, so it didn't take long to open it. My heart was pounding as I lifted the lid, and inside I found several diaries and some photo albums. They all belonged to Aliyah. I felt a little uncomfortable going through the personal thoughts of a deceased woman, especially as she was my husband's late wife, but come on, I'm human, and by now curiosity had me trapped. So I started reading, and what I discovered was absolutely horrible. Aliyah wrote about her relationship with Marcus in exhaustive detail. She talked about how he was constantly unfaithful to her, how he would disappear for days without explanation, only to return acting as if nothing had happened. But at the same time, he was obsessively jealous, insecure, and controlling. He didn't allow her to talk to her family and gradually isolated her from everyone she loved. She wrote about how alone and trapped she felt, how she would get depressed for days on end, how she began to lose herself. And from the way she wrote about him, it was clear that she loved him at one time, but she was also afraid of him. The more I read, the more disturbed I felt. Because this was not the Marcus I knew, or at least not the Marcus I thought I knew. I spent the next 2 days reading every word, with a sick feeling in my stomach. And then I got to the photo albums. At first, everything seemed normal, just a couple documenting their life together. But then I started to notice something. The places they had visited. Marcus and I had been to those same places. Not just the same places, but the same poses. He even had the same clothes in some of those photos. There was a photo of them on a beach standing next to a rock. I had a photo with Marcus in that exact same place. Another one of them in a little cafe smiling over a couple of coffee cups. I had the exact same photo, same angle, same table. It wasn't just 1 or 2 photos, it was dozens. It was as if Marcus had been meticulously recreating the memories he had with Aliyah. But with me instead. My whole body went cold. I felt sick, confused, betrayed. Was I just a replacement? Was I his way of reliving his past with her? And then the worst thought hit me. Did he make Aliyah take her own life? Because after reading her diaries, I was very confused. Marcus wasn't home, so there was nothing I could do but wait. Let me tell you, waiting while you hold this kind of information, total torture. I had to act normally when he called to see how I was. I had to pretend that everything was fine. Inside, my mind was racing, trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. Because one thing was clear, I no longer felt safe. and I wasn't sure if I ever really knew the man I married. Update 1. The day before yesterday, Marcus came home. I was already nervous, but I tried to act normal. I asked him about his mother, made small talk, waited for the right moment. I wasn't sure how to bring up the subject without him completely shutting down, but at the same time, I couldn't keep it to myself any longer. My stomach was in knots, and my hands were sweating when I took out the diaries and the photo album. I placed them on the table in front of him and simply watched his reaction. He barely glanced at the diaries before his face darkened. That was my first clue that he knew exactly what they were. He didn't even ask what I was holding, which was strange. The second clue was his immediate anger. No surprise, no confusion, just direct anger. He yelled at me, saying that I had violated his trust, that I had no right to go through his things. He went on about how this was his past, that I had crossed a line, and how disappointed he was in me for not respecting his privacy. He was so focused on making me feel guilty that he didn't even ask what I had read, not once. I ignored that because I wasn't going to let him make me feel guilty in order to silence me. I asked him directly if everything Aaliyah had written was true. The infidelities, the isolation, the way he treated her. He dismissed it, saying that she was depressed and saw things differently. It was then that I showed him the photos, the matching clothes, the identical places. I asked him if he had been intentionally recreating these memories with me. He simply scoffed, calling me paranoid, and said I was exaggerating everything. It was such an indifferent and dismissive response that it made me feel crazy for having mentioned it. But I knew what I had seen. The same beach, the same pose, the same restaurant, even the same red scarf that I thought was a sweet random gift from him. It turns out that Aaliyah had used an identical one in one of her photos. How was I supposed to believe that was just a coincidence? Instead of answering, he grabbed his keys and left. He didn't come back that night. No explanation, no apology, nothing. The next morning, he walked in as if nothing had happened. He barely looked at me, changed his clothes, and got ready for work. It was then that I asked him where he had been, and, without missing a beat, he said he had stayed at Brian's house. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse him of anything. I just let it go. But the more I sat alone in that house, the more it all started to feel wrong. The diaries, the photos, his reaction, the way he just left, the way he avoided any real answers, it all seemed like pieces of a puzzle I couldn't quite put together. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed answers from someone other than Marcus. That's when I decided to visit his mother. I don't know what I expected, but the moment I mentioned Aaliyah, she stiffened. Her whole body language changed. She became defensive, as if she were trying to cut the conversation off before it had even begun. I tried to take it easy, but I couldn't help myself. I told her everything I had found, the diaries, the photos, Marcus's reaction, the fact that he had disappeared at night. She simply shook her head and told me that I should talk to Marcus about it, that it wasn't up to her, but I couldn't let it go. I practically begged her to tell me the truth. And that's when she finally admitted that Marcus and Aaliyah's relationship had been toxic. That yes, he had cheated on her a lot. That yes, it had made her mental health worse. But beyond that, she didn't want to say much. And then, before I left, she said something that I can't stop thinking about. Some habits are hard to break. At first, I didn't understand what she meant, but as I drove home, I did. She was talking about Marcus. She was talking about his habits. Marcus had a habit of disappearing at night. Marcus had a habit of cheating. And just last night, Marcus had disappeared again. I don't know what came over me, but I grabbed my phone and called Brian. I knew I had to be careful because if I asked him directly if Marcus had been there, he might lie for him. So instead, I acted naturally. I told him that Marcus had been stressed about work lately and asked him if he had noticed anything strange the last time they went out together. Brian, not knowing what I was trying to do, casually told me that the last time they saw each other was last week, and that everything was fine then. That's when my stomach sank. Marcus lied. He wasn't with Brian, he was somewhere else. And that was it for me. That was my breaking point. I couldn't sit in that house any longer waiting for him to come home, acting as if nothing was wrong. I packed a bag, grabbed the essentials, and left. I drove straight to a hotel and checked in. I haven't spoken to him since. Right now, I'm sitting in a hotel room looking at my phone, waiting for something. But I don't even know what I want at this point. Did I make the right decision? Am I overreacting? Am I throwing away my marriage because of a hunch? Or is my instinct right? I don't know, I just feel sick. Update 2. Hi everyone, first of all, thank you for all the replies. Seriously, I didn't expect so many people to care about my chaotic situation. But reading your comments made me feel a little less crazy. I know many of you said I should just leave. That I didn't need any more proof or explanations, but I guess a part of me wasn't ready to just walk away without confronting him one last time. I don't know if that was smart or just stubbornness, but anyway, I decided to go back home before Marcus arrived. I left my bags at the hotel just in case, but I needed to see his reaction when he walked in and realized that I knew for sure he was lying. Maybe I was hoping for some kind of confession, some breakdown where he would finally tell me the truth. Maybe I just wanted to give him the chance to explain, even though deep down I already knew there was no good explanation for any of it. So I sat there and waited and waited. By the time Marcus finally came home, it was 2 a.m. I was half asleep on the sofa, but the moment I heard the door open, my whole body tensed. I don't know what I expected, but when I looked at him, he just looked normal, not guilty, not sorry, not even surprised to see me waiting there. Just tired. I asked him where he'd been. He barely looked at me when he said, "Work ran late." By now, I was sick of playing along. I told him I'd called his office and they said he'd left hours ago. He didn't even blink. He just shrugged and said he'd had a late dinner with a client. The ease with which he lied to me was genuinely chilling. He wasn't hastily making up an excuse. He wasn't even annoyed that I'd caught him in a lie. He just moved on to the next one, as if it were second nature. As if he'd done it a million times before. I told him we needed to talk, that I wasn't going to let this pass, but he just sighed as if I were the one who was exhausting him and said, "I'm too tired for this now," and then he just walked past me towards the bedroom and closed the door behind him. That was it. No fight, no attempt to make me believe his story, nothing. I stood there for a second, just looking at the closed door as if maybe I had imagined the whole thing. And then I exploded. I went over to the door and started banging on it. I don't even know what I was saying at the time, just demanding that he open the damn door and talk to me, that he couldn't just ignore me like that. I banged on that door for 30 minutes, nothing, not a word, not even a "leave me alone." He just ignored me as if I didn't exist. As if I wasn't his wife standing outside that door. Desperate for answers. Eventually, I gave up. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding, I just felt empty. So I grabbed my keys and left the house and drove straight back to the hotel. And now here I am, sitting in this cheap hotel room at 4 a.m., writing this update because I don't know what else to do. I don't even know what I want at this point. Closure? An apology? A reason to stay? A reason to leave? I keep going over everything in my head, trying to put the pieces together, trying to figure out if I'm being dramatic, if I'm overreacting, but I don't think I am. I think I know I'm not. Update 3. Hello, Reddit. I don't even know how to start this, because my brain feels like it's short-circuited. I feel numb. I feel stupid. And most of all, I feel like the biggest idiot on the planet for ever having thought that Marcus was someone he clearly isn't. I know that many of you told me to just leave it, to take what I already knew and go. But I couldn't. I needed to hear him say it. I needed to look into his eyes and see if there was even a hint of remorse. Maybe I wanted to give him one last chance, to be honest, to own up, instead of hiding behind his usual dismissive attitude. Or maybe I was just looking for a reason to finally walk away without any lingering doubts. So I did the only thing I knew I couldn't ignore. I went to his office. I walked straight into the reception area and asked to see him. The receptionist looked a little confused, maybe even uncomfortable, but she called him up anyway. It didn't take long for Marcus to come out. The second he saw me standing there, his whole face changed. His jaw tightened, and he immediately grabbed my arm, pulling me to one side and whispering, "What the hell are you doing here?" He wasn't worried. He wasn't confused. He wasn't scared that something was wrong. He was just angry. And that reaction alone told me everything I needed to know. I told him I wasn't leaving until he gave me some answers. He sighed as if I were some annoying problem he had to deal with and told me to go home. That this wasn't the place to make a scene. That made me even more angry. I told him that if he didn't want me to make a scene, then he needed to talk to me like an adult. So he rolled his eyes and told me to follow him. We walked to a small cafe a block away. He didn't hold my hand, he didn't ask me if I was okay, he didn't even look at me. The moment we sat down, he leaned back in his chair, crossed his arms and said, "What do you want?" As if I were the one being unreasonable. I took a deep breath because my hands were shaking, and I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me break down. I asked him, "Is it true that you cheated on Aaliyah several times?" He didn't even blink. Yes, that was it. No explanation, no justification, just a simple yes. I stared at him, hoping he would say something else, hoping he would look embarrassed or guilty or something. But he just sat there, his face blank, as if this were the most casual conversation in the world. So I pressed further and asked him about the photos, about how every place we had been together was a place where he had already been with her. How even the way we posed in the photos was the same. How he had made me wear clothes that looked almost identical to what Aaliyah wore in those pictures. He sighed as if I were wearing him out. "You're looking too hard for him." That was all. No denial, no anger, just pure disdainful indifference. I could feel my heart pounding in my ears, but he wasn't finished. I asked him where he was the night I confronted him, the night he told me he was with Brian. He didn't even blink when he said, "I was with Brian." And that's when I confronted him. I told him that I had called Brian, that Brian had told me that they hadn't seen each other in a week, that I knew he was lying and that I knew he was cheating on me. For the first time since we sat down, he looked me in the eye, not with guilt, not with regret, but with pure, cold indifference. And then he said, "What do you want me to say?" That destroyed me. Because at that moment I realized that he knew that I knew the truth, and he didn't care. He didn't care that they had caught him. He didn't care that he had hurt me. He didn't even care enough to try to lie his way out of it. I said, "I want you to tell me the truth." And he did. He looked me straight in the eye and said, "Yes, I cheated on you. And no, it wasn't the first time." And then, with this cold, almost amused look on his face, he said, "Are you happy now? Can I go back to work?" As if this was just another little inconvenience in his day. As if none of it mattered. As if I didn't matter. I just stared at him, my brain trying to process what I had just heard. How could someone be so cruel? How could he sit there, knowing everything he had done and not even pretend to care? I asked him, "How can you be so insensitive?" And do you know what he did? He paid for the coffee and left. Just like that. As if I were nothing. As if this whole conversation had never happened. And now, I'm back at the hotel. How did I allow myself to fall in love with someone so emotionally empty? How did I ignore every alarm bell, every inkling, every little moment that should have made me question him? I don't know what to do. Update 4. Hi everyone! It's been 2 months since my last update. And honestly, I've been all over the place trying to deal with everything. So much has come to light since then, and I feel like I've been living in a never-ending nightmare. But I'm finally ready to talk about it. As you know, Marcus was cheating on me. After that last conversation in the cafe, I went back to my hotel and just sat there. I think I was in shock. I couldn't cry. I couldn't even get angry. I just felt empty. Like someone had pulled the rug out from under me. And I was in freefall with no idea when or if I would land. The first few days were the worst. I barely ate. I barely slept. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, going over every moment of our relationship in my head, trying to pinpoint the exact moment when I should have known. Because the signs were there, weren't they? The little moments when my instinct told me that something was wrong, but I ignored it because I didn't want to be that person. The paranoid, insecure wife who created problems out of nothing. But it wasn't nothing, it was everything. And now, I was sitting in a hotel room all alone. While Marcus carried on with his life as if nothing had happened, he didn't even care. I didn't receive a single call or text message from him, not even a false apology or a pathetic attempt to win me back. The only messages I received were short, emotionless texts asking where certain things were in the house. Where's the spare car key? Do you know where my gray suit is? Not even a, how are you, or are you okay? It was as if I had already been erased from her life, as if I were just an ex-maid who moved out and left some loose ends. That hurt more than anything. But slowly I started to get back on my feet. I forced myself to eat, even when I didn't want to. I started going for walks just to get out of my own head, and at some point I realized that sitting in that hotel room, wallowing in grief, wasn't going to change anything. Marcus had already decided that I wasn't worth his time. The least I could do was prove to myself that I was worth mine. So, after 2 weeks of hiding, I finally went back home, just to pick up my things. It was Sunday when I walked in. He was sitting on the sofa watching TV, looking completely relaxed, as if I hadn't disappeared from our home for 2 weeks. He hardly seemed surprised to see me. I told him straight, I'm just here to pack my things. And do you know what he said? Are you sure about this? Are you serious? Am I sure? I just looked at him, feeling this overwhelming mixture of anger and disbelief. After everything I had done, after admitting to having cheated several times without any remorse, he had the audacity to ask me if I was sure. So I asked him, do you even feel guilty about what you did? And this man, this genuine human garbage, had the nerve to look me straight in the eye and say, no, because that's the way men are supposed to be. Being monogamous isn't natural. I can't even describe how disgusted I felt at that moment. Like, wow, this wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't a lapse of judgment. This was who he was. I said nothing more. I just turned around and went straight to packing. I was finished. Finished. There was no going back. There was nothing to save. I wanted to get out of that house and out of his life as quickly as possible. I packed everything I could into a couple of suitcases, grabbed the essentials, and was about to leave when I said to him, we should start the divorce proceedings soon. And that's when he dropped another bombshell. He just smirked. I swear to God, he just smirked and said, I'm not going to divorce you. I was frozen. I thought maybe I had heard him wrong. Maybe he was joking, but no, he was serious. He said, divorcing you would be bad for my image in the community, but I don't mind if you want to live separately and do your own thing. I swear my brain felt like it was breaking for a second. What? What community? He wasn't a politician or a religious leader. I was just a guy with a decent job and a few friends. What image was he talking about? But then I realized that Marcus didn't care about me. He cared about how he looked to others. A divorce would make him look bad. A divorce would mean that people might start asking questions, and he couldn't allow that. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about saving our marriage. It was about control. And in that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to say. I looked him straight in the eye and said, it's not up to you. And then I left. I don't think he expected that. I don't think he thought I would actually do it. Maybe he assumed I would come crawling back, that I would be too scared to face him on this. So I'm currently going through my divorce proceedings, and let's see where this goes. Update 5. Hi everyone, it's been 6 months since my last update, and honestly, it feels like a lifetime has passed. So much has happened. And I've been meaning to go back and share, but I needed time. But now I can finally say it, I'm divorced. It still feels unreal to say that, like after everything Marcus put me through, after all the fighting, the manipulation, the endless back and forth, it actually happened. Believe me, he made it as difficult as possible. He dragged his feet at every step. He refused to sign documents, ignored emails from my lawyer, and even tried to make me feel guilty so that I would stay married, even though we had been living separate lives for months. I think he genuinely thought that if he delayed long enough, I would just give up and come back. I didn't. The whole process exhausted me, but over time, I began to feel lighter. I began to realize that no matter how hard I tried to drag myself along with him, I wasn't going to let him. And then one day I received the final paperwork. Divorced. Official. Done. So yes, I moved to a new place too, but of course, because nothing in my life can be just peaceful, Marcus found out where I live. I don't even know how. I was so careful. I didn't tell mutual friends. I changed my address privately. But somehow he still found out, And of course, the first time he showed up, he was drunk. It was late at night, and I was already in bed when I heard banging on my door. At first, I thought maybe it was a neighbor or someone who needed help, but then I heard his voice. My stomach sank. I didn't open the door. I just stood there, listening as he spluttered insults through the door, calling me a liar, an infidel, which is very ironic coming from him. A selfish woman who ruined his life. He kept saying that I would regret this, that I was nothing without him, and that I would come crawling back when I realized how much I needed him. It was honestly pathetic. I didn't respond. I just waited for him to get tired and leave. Eventually he did, but a few weeks later it happened again. The same thing. Drunk, angry, spitting nonsense at my door as if I owed him something. This time I called the police. By the time they arrived, he was gone. But I reported everything and made sure it was on record because I honestly don't trust him. I don't know what he's capable of when he's like that, and I refuse to let him scare me into silence. So now I'm dealing with the consequences. Mentally, it's been a roller coaster. Some days I feel like I've finally moved on. Other days I feel right back where I started. I didn't deserve what Marcus did to me, and I definitely don't deserve him showing up at my door thinking he still has any control over my life. I don't know what's next for me. But for the first time in a long time, I feel hopeful. Thank you for reading and for being there for me throughout all of this. I appreciate it.